Today we're going to take a look at the Mastin Labs Pushed Portra pack. These are meant to replicate Kodak Portra film when it's been pushed one or two stops, and it has a version of the Kodak 160, Portra 160, pushed 1 and 2, the Portra 400, pushed 1 and 2, and the Portra 800, pushed 1 and 2 stops. It also has 6 different tone profiles that are the same as a Fuji Frontier film scanner, all hard, which is going to let your highlight detail blow, and it's also going to be darker shadow detail. All soft, which is the opposite. It's going to try to bring back as much highlight detail as possible, and it's also going to brighten the shadows so you have more shadow detail. Just highlight hard, just highlight soft, just shadow hard, and just shadow soft. You can turn lens corrections either on or off. This is to replicate either the clean medium format lenses that don't have much vignetting and do not have much distortion, or a 35mm lens that might have more distortion and more vignetting when shot wide open. And then there's 2 different grain settings to replicate either 35mm grain or medium format grain. And this pack comes built for either Canon, Fuji, Nikon, or Sony. And then if your camera is not supported, camera manufacturer is not supported, they recommend just using Canon, and you'll be fairly close but might not be perfect. And then a note on the Fuji profiles, they do not support the X100 series cameras. So it's just for the X Pro 2 and XT2 and similar. All right, let's jump in. All right, here is Portra 160, pushed 1 stop, and this is one of my favorite films shot at, or just pushed 1 stop in during the processing. It leads to a contrasty look compared to regular Portra 160, and I've always loved the colors. Portra 160 pushed 2 stops. I was instantly drawn to this because I've had a ton of this film that I've shot and scanned myself, and the one thing I always remember is how red the shadows get. And so when I saw this film, I was like, oh, you don't have the red shadows. And then I hit the push 2 stops, and there they are. And that's a very similar look that I've always tried to achieve with my digital files. So they nailed it. Here's the Portra 400, which to me looks exactly like Portra 400. I was actually extremely blown away with the accuracy in these presets. It would honestly trick me into thinking this is one of my film shots. Here's push 2 stops. Here's Portra 800, and Portra 800 push 2 stops. And then what they recommend doing is you first decide the film stock you're going to use, and then you come in and you pick a tone profile. So all hard is going to keep that bright highlight on the dress, and then it's going to have deep, dark, contrasty shadows. All soft is the opposite of that, where it's brightening the shadow information here, and it's also pulling back the highlights in the dress. So it's just looking almost HDR, high dynamic range scene, but in a beautiful way. And then you have highlight hard, so that would be just regular shadows, but you're letting your highlights blow, and I kind of like that look here. And then you have highlight soft, which is your regular shadow information, but pulling back the highlights. Shadow hard, which is regular highlights, pulling back the shadows, shadows being dark, not as much shadow information. And then shadow soft, where you have regular highlights, and then boosted the shadows a little bit to pull out more shadow detail. Lens corrections on, lens corrections off, and I prefer on in this image. and then 35mm grain, and medium format grain. And these grain numbers are very low compared to some presets. Let's zoom in here. Looks like it's a fairly small file. So that's a brief overview. Let's look at some other photos. Let's take a peek at Nikon. Here's an image from Krista Marie Parker. She's from Seattle. There's Portra 160. Wow. That Portra 800 one-stop is gorgeous on this image. And so the whole thing with Mastin is you don't have to do much. You just need to dial your white balance, temperature, and tint, and then your exposure. So you can start with a white dropper. Typically for me, that always leads to an image that's too cool. So I'll just slightly warm it, not too much. 50, 600 sounds about right. And then right now my tint's at -9, but I don't see any sort of color cast that's bugging me here. Let's just take a look at the skin tones as we go a little bit more green. Sometimes people that are emulating film end up a little bit on this green end of the scale, and that can, to some people, be a film look. Others might go more magenta. I, in the past, have definitely preferred more on the magenta side, but I'm open to both. 2 magenta, or sorry, 2 green, 2 magenta, somewhere here is just right. Beautiful. Exposure to taste. You can watch your histogram if you'd like. I just like to look at the image and make sure I'm not blowing any highlight detail and make sure I'm getting nice clean skin tones without any muddiness. Alright, so let's look at the all hard. All hard is great for adding a bit of contrast to a low contrast scene, which this is. All soft. Highlight hard. Highlight soft. Shadow hard. Shadow soft. And personally, the shadow soft is actually looking really amazing because you're getting all the shadow detail, but you're still having some contrast in the highlights, which this scene, overcast day, doesn't have a ton of contrast. This makes it look a little bit more film-like to me, and it's just a really, really good look. Do one more. I feel like this is a Portra 160 image. It's so beautiful. All right, white balance. It's a bit cool. Let's go somewhere right in there. Bring that tint down a little bit. Right in there. So these highlights are a bit hot, and I'm wondering if we should do highlight soft. Looks okay. All soft. Pretty nice. Just shadow soft. Good look as well. Cool. Let's look at some Canon photos. And I just realized I was using the Canon presets on the Nikon images. Let's look and see if there's much of a difference when we switch to Nikon. So for this one we had used the .800 pushed one stop. Slight change. Notice it in the midtones of the buildings. But that might have been the tone profile. Yep, looks like it was. So here we can compare. There's almost no difference. You can see some slight differences in the saturations of the colors and color tonalities in the greens, but not much of a difference there, which is good to know. And it shows how these profiles would probably still work on a camera that's not supported, like an Olympus or something like that. All right, back to Canon. Here's a photo from Samantha Smith. Let's do Portra 160, push 2 stops. I love the way the denim looks in her jeans here. I think on this I want to bring back some of that highlight detail. So let's look at highlight soft. Let's look at all soft. Probably too bright. Bring the exposure down. It's looking pretty solid. Let's see what it looks like slightly warmer. It's looking like Portra. And it's kind of funny because Portra can kind of get obnoxiously warm if you're not used to it. A little slight green tone. I feel like you could trick people into thinking this is film fairly easily. The greens are just right, the blues are right, the skin tones are clean. The skin tones look so much like film. They look like film. All right, let's look at another photographer's work here. Let's look at Matt and Tish. A little indoor set. So much contrast. Kind of like the cleanliness of this Portra 160. And I think for this situation, because it's such a high contrast scene, I want to see what all soft looks like. That looks really nice. And I would probably be somewhere right in there for the exposure. I would bring these highlights back slightly. Probably not all the way, but yeah, beautiful photo. And the white balance is pretty nailed. You could warm it slightly. Yeah, there you go. Looks like Portra 160 shot. Let's do another. I really like the look of this Portra 400 push 2 stops. It's really moody. Yeah, let's do this. Let's try all hard. Ton of contrast there. Let's do all soft. Gorgeous. I'm almost thinking we should just do highlight hard. Highlights off. Interesting. Hard to go wrong. White balance straight out of camera. It's perfect. Shot looks great. Alright, let's do one more here. These all look pretty good. I think I would just stick with this. White balance dropper. A little bit too warm. Bring that back. Gorgeous. Let's look at a backlit shot. It's pretty. I'm going to go all hard, add a little bit of contrast. Maybe highlight hard. Highlight soft. One more here. This is from Matt and Tish. I like that. Let's look at the white balance. It's a little cool. There we go. One more. Gorgeous. One click. And our last photo. Yeah, one click. I really like how that looks. That looks nice too. Let's go with Portrait 800. I'm digging it. And the white balance is pretty much there. Let's go all soft, see what that looks like. Let's go all hard. And let's just try shadow soft. There we go. I didn't want to lose his skin tones. And I like this being hard over here. Nice contrast. Add a little bit of film grain, 35mm. Solid photo. Alright, so these are the Pushed Portra pack from Mastin Labs. And stay tuned for the full review. Thanks.